Okay, so I just wanted to make a quick video trying to explain conjugate acids and bases. So before we talk about conjugate acids and bases, we have to be comfortable and familiar with what just acids and bases are. So for the purpose of these problems, acids are compounds that when you dissolve them in water, they lose hydrogens, or they get rid of hydrogens. They donate hydrogens, however you want to say it. And bases are going to accept hydrogens, okay? So if we pick, any old acid like HCl, and I asked what's the conjugate base of this acid, the conjugate base is just the acid after it loses its hydrogen. Okay, remember this hydrogen's H+. So if you lose that positive charge, you end up with Cl-. And we call this the conjugate base. Okay, so the conjugate base is the acid after it loses its hydrogen. Okay, let's try it with another one. Okay, we'll just say water. We'll call water the acid. Okay. And if I ask you what's the conjugate base of this, you just ask yourself, well, what's going to happen if water loses a hydrogen? You're going to get OH-. Okay? I mean, it could lose another one and you could have O2-, but, there are two correct answers there. So that's what a conjugate base is. Conjugate base is the acid after it loses hydrogen. Let's try one more. So if we have something like carbonic acid, H2CO3, and I ask you for the conjugate base, again, just ask yourself, well, what's going to happen when it loses hydrogen? HCO3-. And again, if it lost the other one, it would be CO3-2-. There are a couple of answers here. So those are conjugate bases. Now conjugate acids is just kind of the opposite. Okay, you start with a base. So let's start with bicarbonate. Okay, so this is our base. And you ask yourself, well, what's going to happen if it gains a hydrogen? Because that's what bases do. Okay, and then you're going to have H2CO3. Okay, so the conjugate acid is just the base after it accepts its hydrogen. Okay, so this is the conjugate acid. Let's try another one. So if we have something, I can use water. I could say water is a base. Okay, and I ask what the conjugate acid of this is. You ask yourself, well, what's it going to be if it gains a hydrogen? And it's going to be H3O+. Okay, so the conjugate acid is just the base after it accepts the hydrogen. Let's try one more. So if we start with something like ammonia, and again I call this the base, and I ask for the conjugate acid, just ask yourself, well, what happens when the base accepts its hydrogen? Okay, you get NH4+, and this is the conjugate acid. So again, the conjugate base is just the acid after it loses its hydrogen. The conjugate acid is the base after it accepts its hydrogen. Okay, so you just have to ask yourself those questions, and it'll make those problems a lot simpler. So if you have any questions, please let me know.